In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Let us pray to the Lord. Lord, have mercy. Lord, grant us to greet this day in peace. Help us in all things to rely on your holy will. In every hour of the day, reveal your will to us. Bless our dealings with all who surround us. Teach us all to treat all that come to us throughout the day with peace of soul and firm conviction that your will governs all. In all of our deeds and words, guide our thoughts and feelings. In unforeseen events, let us not forget that all things are under your care. Teach us to act firmly and wisely without embittering or embarrassing others. Give us strength to bear the fatigue of the coming day and all that it shall bring. Direct our will. Teach us to pray. Pray yourself in us. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Father Jim.
And Stacy, I do want to thank you for inviting me. The fine example the metropolis of Pittsburgh has set, starting next Wednesday will be our first stewardship chair's call, similar to this one. So Stacy was kind enough to invite me to hear how you all been doing it. So hopefully we can replicate the good work that you've all been doing in the metropolis of San Francisco. So thank you, Stacy.
You bet. The shocking thing is that means next Wednesday is July 1st, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Okay. Moving ahead. So I want to tell just a brief sort of anecdote about how I came to meet Father Stavros. Sometime during Lent, my mother sends me this email and says, I get this daily email. It's wonderful. You really should check it out. So I went ahead and subscribed to it. And as I'm subscribing, she says, yeah, my friend and her best friend in Kumbada, who lives in Dallas, Texas, told her about it. And now I'm going, okay, Texas to Ohio, place to place to place. I'm like, what's going on here? And so, as I said, I subscribed to this email and watched it and read it for a couple of weeks. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to call this Father Stavros guy and just see what it's all about. And boy, did I learn about a great parish in Tampa, Florida, where Father Stavros has been for 16 years now. It's a parish of, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 425, 430 families. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's in an area where there are another 3 or 4 churches within a half hour, 45 minutes. Newport Richey, Tarpon Springs, who am I forgetting?
Clearwater, St. Pete.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of churches in his area. I reached out to Father Stavros really out of the blue and, learned about his newsletter and then so much more. And I'm hoping, Father Stavros was going to share that with us all today. Just a great parish doing a lot of wonderful things. And I will say one last thing to everybody on this call. One of the most telling things that Father Stavros told me was that his spiritual father is Father Akrotirianakis, who, many of us saw at the Missions and Evangelism Conference. We've had him as a guest speaker on this gathering, and that told me a lot right there about Father Stavros and his joie de vivre, his style, his way of doing things. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to him and let him talk about his stewardship program, about his email, his daily emails, and everything else that's going on in his parish. If you'd like, feel free to send me questions by chat as they come up. But we're going to let Father Stavros talk for a few minutes, and then we'll just sort of kick off our discussion after that. Father Stavros, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy, for that kind introduction and for having me. And if you see the name Sandra on the bottom of the thing, she's actually from our parish in Tampa, one of our stewardship people. I mentioned this to our stewardship ministry, so she wants to listen but not participate, which is, I told her it's fine.
Sure, wonderful.
So
welcome.
That's who that is. She's got grandmother duty, so. So I'm originally from Whittier, California. I grew up at St. Anthony's in Pasadena, and in college I went to St. Sophia Cathedral and went from there to the seminary, and I've served a parish in Enfield, Connecticut, in Asheville, North Carolina, and in Tampa. In both the Enfield and the Asheville parish, I found dues there, and left stewardship the time I was there. And I came to Tampa 16 years ago, and I found a church that was mostly empty. And I found stewardship with a suggested minimum, which became the common maximum. And so from the beginning in Tampa, I made some decisions that were somewhat controversial, I guess, at the time, but they've worked out okay. One of them was to take away the minimum mandatory. I said that's your maximum. I mean, the minimum was $400, and the average stewardship pledge was like $425. And I said, well, that's the problem. They said, well, if you take that away, what if people only give $100? I said, well, they might. But I mean, that's the nature of stewardship, is that it's not a fee. The other thing we did here was I made a choice to back out slowly the Greek language out of liturgy. Now we're probably 5% Greek, and most of it's English. And we put a heavy emphasis on our youth. We took an emphasis off of Greek dancing. I said, if you're interested in that, and you're not going to come to church. And they had a great dance group, but none of them came to church. And I said, if that's what you'd like to do, then we're not going to have that. And a lot of them left, and that's okay, because many more came. So then, the second year I was here, I suggested, why don't we give 10% of our festival proceeds to a local charity? And they all thought that I was from Mars. And I said, no, that's really important. I want you to commit to this. 10% to a local non-Orthodox charity, something in the Tampa community. And you can pick anything you want. So they picked Life Path Hospice. And so for 15 years of my 16, we've partnered with Life Path Hospice on the festival. They get 10% of our profits, and now they send us a lot of volunteers. And so it really is a partnership. And then when I go visit hospice, unfortunately it's, often, when I walk in, they'll say, oh, the priest from the church that's generous, instead of the priest from the church that has the great food. They used to be like, we love the food over there. I'm like, can someone please say something about our church that doesn't have to do with food? So I love that. Again, these things came with, and by the way, that first festival, when we gave 10% away, we had the best festival we ever had. And then they said, okay, well, we feel like God rewarded us for that, so we can have your 10%. Again, I'm making it sound easy. It wasn't. It's been 16 years, and we've had a lot of fights, so to speak, along the way. I've encouraged people to give a percentage of their income, starting with 1%, and then increase by 1% every year. So if you're giving whatever you're giving, give 1%. Next year, give 2%, 3%, until you get up to 10%. We do not have everybody doing that, or even close, but we have some people who are doing it, and we have some people who are working, and they're up at 2 or 3%. That's something we did. Another thing that we did in the last 4 or 5 years is we got rid of a stewardship goal. So we no longer we will put something in the budget, this is the target, but we don't have a thermometer. We don't have a goal. We don't talk about that amount that we're trying to get. We really just don't talk about it. And we've told people, pledging to Christ, it's a private matter. We don't want to see names, on the wall. We still do the thing of putting names in the bulletin once a year, just to sort of shame the people who haven't pledged yet to get their name on there. But we don't, I know in places where they put category amounts, like, platinum, archangel, down to like Pharisee or whatever the lowest category is. So we don't have any of that. And I don't really talk about money all that much. It's kind of a running joke here. I give 3 sermons on stewardship. Our stewardship Sunday is usually the 3rd Sunday of December. Our festival is in early November, and I think ideally stewardship Sunday should be in November sometime. But because of our festival and Thanksgiving, it's always been the 3rd Sunday of December. And so they know the first 3 Sundays of December, we will talk about stewardship, and I will talk about money. And outside of that, we don't really hear about money. I don't use the word money at all. I was always bothered by when a priest would call and say, like, how are you? And they don't care. They just want to ask you for money. And I said, I don't ever want to be known as the priest who's got the cross in one hand and the tray in one hand. So I really don't talk about it very much, other than those 3 Sundays. Something else that we've done in order to encourage stewardship is I try to discourage this nickel and diming mentality. So we don't pass second trays in our church for causes, like you have to pass a tray for Holy Cross, or pass a tray for St. Basil's, or pass a tray for whatever. We figured out what we were getting from the trays, and then we doubled it, and then we put that in the budget. So we have every year on Holy Cross Day, we just cut a check for Holy Cross, and we'll put an extra tray out by the door of the church if anyone wants to contribute more, but they won't see a tray passed in front of them. Ditto St. Basil's, ditto whatever. And we put money aside, quite a bit of money, for natural disasters. So when there's an appeal, there was a tornado in Alabama or a hurricane in South Carolina, please pass a tray for that. Well, we already have money set aside for natural disasters, so we just got a check from there. We set aside, and then we have a sort of a discretionary charity item, and that is for unforeseen things. There were fires in Greece, or we're an extra appeal for the seminary or whatever it is. So we have some money there. We've increased our charitable giving. We were doing 10% of our festival profits, and then we decided, let's not do that. Let's just have a percentage of our budget go to charity. That way, if we don't have a festival sometime, or we want to scale down the festival, or we have bad weather, it's not good, we'll commit a percentage of our budget to charity. So right now the percentage is about 5%, 5 to 6%, somewhere in there. And we're going to go up 1% every year until we get to 10. Stacy, you have a question?
Father, do you mind sharing what your total annual operating budget is? If you do, that's okay.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask.
No, our total, let me grab out of the door here so I don't speak out of school. Our total operating budget, our budget for this year proposed was about 800,000.
Okay.
No, less than that, about seven and change, low sevens. And then our charitable giving is a little over 30.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have a whole list of ministries on here that we give to every year. Along with, now there's 7,000 of that money is discretionary contribution. So if there's something that comes up during the year, we will just take it from there.
Okay.
Shoot, I lost my train of thought. So now this year it looks like we're probably not going to have a festival because of the COVID situation. So we're actually like in good shape for the charity, because this is the first year we didn't plan to tie that to the festival. So and we make some of our charitable donations mid-year, and we just got the checks the other day, and no one says, hey, we got to hold something back, it might be a bad year. Like, we're very committed to that. And I believe, as we read in the gospel, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else is added to you. That's the gospel this Sunday, actually. So we're committed to that, good or bad. We're going to do the charitable giving, and no one here gives it a second thought. Another thing that we did about a year and a half ago, we stopped passing trays. We just decided cold turkey, get rid of the trays, and we stopped putting out a tray for candles. And it's almost like God's providence, because this year with the COVID wiping out Holy Week, it didn't really mess us up too bad. I know brother priests were like, oh my gosh, we lost $50,000 on candles and trays during Holy Week. I'm like, we didn't lose anything because we weren't planning on getting anything. So this would have been in January 1 of 19 is when we stopped passing trays. and we stopped selling candles. And we came to this decision. Someone came to a Sunday school teachers meeting that we had, and they were crying because they said one day they wanted to light a candle because they were having surgery, they didn't have any money, and they felt guilty that they didn't have any money to put in the tray. And we all looked at each other and said, what are we doing here? So I announced in church the next day without even consulting the board. I'm like, there's no tray there anymore. Because if a parishioner cannot light a candle because they can't find a couple dollars, like we're really doing something wrong. And we took the trays away from the coffee hour too. And then the ministry said, well, wait a minute, how are we going to make money? I'm like, we're just going to put that in the budget. If you need $1,000 for, the seniors group, well, we'll just put that on the budget. And so our budget has gone up a lot. Stewardship has gone up a lot. But now stewardship is doing about 80% of our budget, and there's no nickel and diming. People know that if they pledge, $5,000 a year, they're not going to get a tray for this and an appeal for this, and we just don't have any of that stuff. So, which is how I think stewardship should be. My family pledges about 8% of our income, and we're working our way up to 10. But I'm like, this is how much I want to spend. And I don't want to have, a letter, hey, give for this, and hey, give for this, hey, give for this. I'm like, I'm giving everything at the beginning of the year in my pledge, and that's it. So anyway, we still haven't convinced everybody, but every year we have more people that are increasing their pledge and understanding what we're trying to do. The other thing I want to say about stewardship before I get to outreach and evangelism is that we emphasize the stewardship of time, and there's a difference between time and talent. Most people think that stewardship of time, like if you're on the parish council or you sing in the choir, most people say like, well, I give my time and my talent to the parish council and the choir. And the way I have understood stewardship is that you give your talent to the choir or to the parish council, but you give your time to God. So now we have on our stewardship form, we have an area for your treasure. We have an area for your talent where we list all of the ministries and what you want to participate in. And then we have a separate form that is your stewardship of time. And I ask people, don't turn that in. Fill that form out and put it in your Bible. And that form says how much time I'm going to give in prayer, how much time I'm going to give in reading the scriptures, how much time I'm going to give in worship, how much time I'm going to spend with my spiritual father this year. Am I going to go to confession this year? How I'm going to keep the fast this year. And so people fill out their stewardship of time form. We never see those. I'm like, that's your private time working on your salvation. And whether you're on the parish council or in the choir or anything else, you still got to have that. That's the most important pledge. I mean, if you're not going to spend any time praying and worshiping, then I don't want you on the parish council. Another thing that we went, speaking of parish council, a few years ago when I had been here about 7 or 8 years, I said to the parish one year, I said, we're going to have a new requirement. If you want to be on the parish council, you have to go to confession at least once a year. And if you don't go to me, just have your spiritual father write me a 1-line email saying I've seen George Pappas in the last year. That's all they have to say. And we upped the game with the parish council immediately. The people who didn't want to do that didn't run, and everybody who ran, they had a more uplifting spiritual attitude, I guess, when they came in. So that really helped. I see there's a question here, Stacy. You want me to take that now, or you want me to do it after?
I'll tell you what. I'm looking at the questions, and they seem to be kind of stewardship related right now, Father Stavros. So if you want to touch on them now and then move on to outreach and evangelism kinds of things after, sure.
All right, okay. So my parish, the question is, what percentage of your parish are mixed marriages, converts, immigrants? Is your parish primarily families, young adults, retirees, or good mix? I would say the average age of parishioner here is probably in the mid to late 40s. So by our standards, I would say it's a young parish. In a given year, I baptize about 30 and bury about 8. Unfortunately, some of the ones I bury are young. I have a young lady we're burying on Monday that's 23 and died from heart failure. And this is the 3rd year in a row where I have a burial for someone in their 20s. But thankfully, we don't have many of that. Hold on just one. Sorry about that. I have a sinus condition that is acting up. We have, I would say, the majority of our marriages are mixed marriages. There's probably 2 people in the entire church who don't speak any English. My wife, as Father Jim knows, is 100% Japanese. So I'm in a mixed marriage of cultures. She is Orthodox, obviously. So we have about 200 kids in our Sunday school. Our average attendance is about 350. Got 50 kids in the altar. So we have a lot of youth here. And I think that definitely works in our favor. And also another thing that works in favor in Tampa is that we have a lot of new people. In the last 16 years I've been here, we went from 200 families to 431. So the majority of people have moved in my time. So there's not, one of the things that's a challenge, especially like when I got here, is like, oh, Father, we've always done it this way, or, I've been here since the dawn of time. So we don't have as much of that here because a lot of people have come in that are new to the area. So anyway, I hope that answers your question, Michelle.
Yeah.
That.
I'm going to go back up, Father Stavros.
Yep.
There's a question from Steve Pappas. Do you find parishioners are giving monthly, weekly, quarterly, annually, a combination of all of the above?
I would say the majority give monthly or yearly. The majority do not do weekly. I encourage people to do weekly. We do weekly. I think the majority here do monthly or less frequent.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And there was a back to the budgeting kind of questions. There was one about, does charity giving include Holy Cross, or is that a separate Holy Cross, etc.? I don't know what the etc. necessarily means,
Holy
but
Cross.
I'm assuming. Okay, so other Orthodox charities. St. Basil's, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, all of the above, St. Basil's and other ILCC, any of that stuff that we used to do, that we do second baskets for in our church. Are they separate?
I'll tell you who we support. We support Life Path Hospice. We support a group called Love Inc., which is a local Tampa thing where they try to get people off the streets and into job placement. Then we do IOCC. We give them a straight item every year, and then any disaster relief initiative goes to IOCC. Then we do the OCMC. We do Focus North America. That's a new one. I think that's up in your area. If any of you know Kenny Kidd, he's my spiritual son. But he's one of the people for Focus. We do something called Matthew 25. That's a local food bank. We do Orthodox Christian Prison Ministry, Clergy Education Fund through our metropolis, Holy Cross Seminary, Patriarchal Charities. That gets given to Philoptochos. And the Diaconia Center for the Metropolis of Atlanta.
And that's all part of the 5%?
Yeah.
That in total is 5% right now, and you're moving it up to 10. Okay.
Yep. One of the things I mentioned about the patriarchal charities in Philoptochos, this was a big, I guess, argument for a few years, and then eventually I wore them down, I guess. I said to the Philoptochos, I said, if I had it in my heart to buy lawn equipment and mow lawns for people who couldn't mow their own lawn, and I asked you for $1,200 to buy lawn equipment, and you said, no, have car washes to raise your own money. I would have 20 car washes, I'd raise the money, I'd buy the equipment, and I'd be so exhausted I would never mow a lawn. So I said to the Philoptochos, what I really would like to do is, instead of you spending all your time and money, all of your time making cookies and selling them and making money to pay off your obligations, instead of doing it that way, I like to take all the money that you normally spend, I like to double it, and I like to just cut you a check on the first of the year, and you pay Holy Cross, Patriarch, anybody else, and then I want you to focus on like face-to-face ministry. And it took me a couple of years to get that done. But now our Philoptochos has like a visitation committee. They go visit people in hospitals. I mean, they visit all our shut-ins at Christmas and at Easter, and they're not making cookies in the kitchen. And they actually go and they serve at a food soup kitchen thing that we do. And I said, because when you're sitting in the hall rolling cookies with your friends, and that's fun. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's fun, but then when it's all done, you've never really interacted with anybody. I mean, we had a retreat on how to pray with people. I said, so when you go to a hospital, like, you can say a prayer. I'm not there, but you can still say a prayer with them. And so it's totally changed the game with like our Philoptochos. I'm very proud of our Philoptochos for that. But we had, again, I've been here a long time, and we had a lot of arguments about that. A lot of Philoptochos ladies were mad at me for a long time. But eventually, like, they came around and like, oh, thank God that we have this system now. So I see another question about how much of our yearly budget is from stewardship. Where's the income on here? All right, our stewardship for this year will end up being about 600,000 out of our 800,000. So 75%. I see a thing from Father Jim. Do you permit optional donations for candles? Yes, we have a tray there if people want to, but there's a sign that says we don't charge for candles. If you want to put a donation, go for it. Let's see. Are those charities in addition to what Philoptochos gives? No. So some of this charitable money goes to Philoptochos and they give it. You have minimum pledges for non-members that want to get married or enroll children in Goya. Okay, that's a great question. So we don't have any minimum for people who want to enroll children in Goya. We just want your children to come. We have a minimum for people who want to get married, baptized, or otherwise use the church. It's 500. It's 500 for baptism and 1,000 for wedding. And that's because there are a lot of people who we don't call it a fee. We call it a facility use fee, but it gives you a year of membership. Because we have a lot of people who, exploit the church. They want to get married. They're never going to come back. And I'm like, I know you're never going to come back, so just give us some money and you can use the church and then, be on your merry way. I insist that they come for like premarital counseling with me for like 3 or 4 hours. And we've gotten a few people to actually decide to join the church like that. But the majority that they're not serious, I'm like, just come, transaction, and leave. It's, I hate to say that. Forgive me if that sounds very crass, but 1 year, my first year here, we had like 36 weddings, some like really amazing amount of weddings. And most of them were not mine, and they never came back. And I'm like, what are we doing here? I don't want to do 36 weddings. I'd rather do 12 and really know the people. So that's what we're doing now. We don't really have people who want to get married here anymore because I made the fee too high. So they go other places. All right, so outreach. I said that we have a percentage to charity every year. And we have the festival money. So we have two other ministries that we support as part of stewardship outreach. One of them is called community outreach. We partnered with First Presbyterian Church in downtown Tampa. That's right in the middle of the district where we have the most homeless people, serving food on Saturday mornings. We are the first group to partner with them. So the third Saturday of the month is ours, and we'll have 15, 20 parishioners or more that'll go down there and serve breakfast, even just hang out and pray with people, talk to them. They have a clothing room. We help get clothes and things like that. And now we support that the ministry is called Matthew 25. We just call it community outreach, but we support them with our workers, and we also support them with our money. And I'm really, really, on the subject of Matthew 25, I'm really proud of my parish. This last week, we raised $5,000 for them. I mentioned in the pulpit a couple of weeks ago, I said, this is a time where lots of people are worried, are we going to run out of money? And I said, I want to make a statement as a parish. I want every family to give $5. $5. I said 400 families times $5, that's $2,000. This is one of the rare times I asked for money. I said, I just want to make a statement. I want some money to leave from our church and go to a local charity where they need some food. And I said, that's it. I'm just going to ask once, and that's it. When you got a week, please, everyone give $5. So a week passed, one announcement from the pulpit and one email, and they came up with $5,200. And we sent the check got sent today, actually. And I'm so proud of them, you know, and people respond because they like that. They like supporting charitable causes here. The other thing that we're doing, and I got this idea from Father Costa, and I'm so grateful, we're doing something called Grief Share, which is a national program. It's a 13-week video-based series for people who are in grief. And so we've advertised this to not only our parish, but the local community. When you are a part of Grief Share, you kind of like register yourself as a Grief Share site. So if you are interested in Grief Share in Tampa, you can go in there and you'll find that St. John's is a Grief Share site. And so we've been doing it for 2 semesters. We actually have people from the community who are not Orthodox or affiliated with our church who come to Grief Share every Tuesday night for 13 weeks. And some of them came back a second time, and some of them are even coming to church, which is really, really cool. And at the end of the Grief Share, we paired the first semester with this Christmas candlelight service we do for people who have lost somebody, and we invited all of them to it. And so we've had some people come into our church because of Grief Share. So Father Costas, thank you for that great idea that you helped me with, I don't know, a year and a half or so ago. We're up and going with that. So that's outreach. And then evangelism, there's 2 big evangelism things we do. One is the prayer team that Stacy mentioned. It's a reflection I write every morning. I've been doing it for almost 5.5 years. It goes out to almost 3,000 people now, and it's on several platforms, so maybe it's more than that, I don't know. But I write on various topics. On the weekends, I write about the scriptures. The Saturday is usually the Epistle of Sunday, and Sunday is the Gospel of Sunday. And then during the weeks, I write on different topics. Right now, I'm writing on the Psalms, at comfort in our time of crisis. I was writing on encouragement, something called the Heart of Encouragement, but I paused that when the COVID thing started because I thought that the Psalms was more appropriate, and I'll pick that up at some point when we're done with this. So we do that, and the community's been very supportive. They support the time I spend doing it. My pastoral assistants, we have 2 of them now. My pastoral assistants make sure they get uploaded on the multiple platforms every day. They take email questions from people. It's been a really awesome thing. And then the other evangelism thing we started a couple years ago, I think we've done 3 of these. We call it the Come and See Dinner. I didn't come up with this idea. I got it from the church in Birmingham, actually. That's why I love these best practices, because you can steal ideas from other people. But the church in Birmingham, I'm friends with someone there who told me that they do something after their festival. They invite people for another dinner about 10 days after the festival, just to get more in-depth discussion about Orthodoxy. And so we started that a couple of years ago, and we not only tell people come and see at the festival, but invite your neighbors. We have postcards made and whatnot. And we get probably about 25 people that come, and then we have about 25 of our people there in order to meet and greet them. We make sure we have someone from Sunday school and someone from the choir and all the different demographics we have. And we've had some people look into our church from that. So that's really awesome. Another thing we do well here is we have a welcome ministry. We don't call them a welcome committee. We have a welcome ministry, and at every service before COVID, and it will resume when it's over, we have 3 greeters. We have 2 greeters at the door. when you leave our church, you exit from the side door because it opens up to the hall. So we have a greeter at the two greeters at the side door who just say hello to everybody. And then we have someone that we call the ambassador, and the ambassador sits in the front row and watches me give Antidron. And when there's someone that I don't know, instead of saying, hey, go meet somebody in the hall, like the ambassador is like literally right there. So if you're at our church and you want to join, you know, I'll say, you know, hey, Maria, this is Mike, and he's new to the church. And Maria will take that person and give him a welcome packet and take him to the hall and have a cup of coffee with them. And then one of the greeters at the door will come and take over for the ambassador, so that there's always someone right there. Because I've said to people, hey, you know, I'll meet you in the hall in 15 minutes, and they're gone by the time I get there. So the welcome ministry has been really instrumental in helping people get into our church. I see there's a question: how do lay people support your stewardship message appeal? I don't know what you mean by appeal. We have we have a stewardship committee, obviously, that helps write all the stuff. You know, like in most parishes, we have a stewardship Sunday, and we probably get, I don't know, 40% of our pledges that day, 40% of our families, and probably 60% of the dollars. We're going to get the pledge dollars that day. And then some of the people, you know, they'll trickle in the rest of December. Then we send a letter out in January, and we get a lot more of them. And even now we have an acronym, we call it LIBUNTS, last year but not this year. So people who pledged last year but just haven't got around to it this year. So we have about 44 LIBUNTS that we have to go collect. So there'll be a letter at some point, and I'm nervous now with the COVID thing about like, hey, come on, are you gonna pledge this year? Just, you know, I don't care even how much money you put, just give us your name so we know that we can count on you this year for something. So I mean, I think they're like in every parish, you have the people that straggle in, you have people who are like, I'm not going to fill out a form, I don't want my name on anything, and you have people who are like, I'm going to do it only at the end of the year. But I mean, by and large, I think they're good. Do people speak to the congregation as well? Oh, that depends. The question is, when asking, do people speak to the congregation as well, or am I the only one who makes the appeal? We vary that in different years. Last year we had lay people do it on 2 of the Sundays, and I did 1 of them. Other years I've done all of them. Other years we've had like short, 5-minute things from like 3 lay people. Last year we had 1 guy and his wife who like gave the sermon one Sunday, and it was just awesome what they did. So that varies year to year. All right, so another comment about stewardship, and then any more questions you have. And I hope I'm not boring you. When they give us our vestments, when we become priests, and they give us the microphone, and then we don't know how to like turn it off. And everyone says, Axios, you got the microphone, you can talk all day. And a lot of us talk too long, and I'm probably one of them. In a serious comment about the stewardship, I read this in the last year, that stewardship really is about your life. We think like stewardship of time, talent, and treasure, and everybody kind of knows that. But I started looking at stewardship as like the stewardship of your life, and moment by moment in your life. Like right now, my life consists of, 15, 17 people on this screen. And am I being a good steward of the time I'm spending with you? I'm not a good steward of my family at this moment because I'm not with them. I'm not a good steward of my parish right now because I'm not with them. I'm with this group, and am I being as good of a steward as I can? And the stewardship that's called for here is, my time. Am I giving you my attention and maybe my talent? There's no money involved here. But, last week when there was an appeal for some money in our parish, like Feed the Hungry, people can ask themselves, can I be a good steward? Can I find $5 to give to somebody who needs some food? But the stewardship of our life is something I preach about a lot. Most people have a hard time being present. We're on our phones and all over the place, and we don't really sit and engage people in the eye. That's not good stewardship, because you're not giving 100% in what you're doing. Most people think stewardship is about 10%. It's actually about 100%. Am I giving 100% effort in what I'm doing at this moment in my life? If God so wills for me to be leaving this life right now, I wouldn't mind if he walked in the door right now, because he would see me being a good steward of my time and a good steward of my life. Was I a good steward today with my life? And today's the day I have. Was I a good steward with that? So when I heard that, it really kind of opened my eyes a little bit more to what stewardship's all about. It's about, what do I have? What have I been given? What have I been blessed with? And how am I using it? So
Thank
there's
you,
a question. Go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off, Father. I wanted to say that I really appreciated that last sentiment that you shared. And then I was going to direct your attention to the question that you're already probably looking at about small group programs.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. So we have, again, we've done this with success, and, there are ebbs and flows. At one point, we had like 6 small group Bible studies going. Right now, we have 2. We had 6, then 5, then 3, then 5, and now we have 2 very solid Bible studies. One of them, my pastoral assistant does, and then we have a women's Bible study that I'm doing right now. We have a men's group that we started about a year ago. In the men's group, we had a men's Bible study for a while, and the men don't like talking about serious things. They were always like, they wanted to argue like politics, and I'm like, it's like 7:30 in the morning. I'm hardly awake. I don't want to argue about anything right now. So I said, okay, guys, we're going to have a men's group. It'll be different. We're going to meet once a month. We're going to go out for dinner. So we have a lot of restaurants right around the church. We go get some food, and then we come back and we have like real life discussion for like an hour and a half. So it's an hour socializing and an hour and a half discussion. And it's once a month on Sunday nights from 5 to 7:30. Now we're doing it on Zoom. And usually it's just kind of an open forum question thing. And we could talk about marriages. We could talk about kids. Last time we talked about the holiness of objects. We got into the whole communion spoon thing, which I'm not going to talk about here. And we have a good group of guys. We get about 17 guys per meeting. We probably have 25, 30 guys who come at least once a quarter, and they're range in age from 25 to 80.
Oh,
wow. It's a good mix of people.
Excellent.
But it's time, I've been here 16 years. So, I've had a long time to do this. It's not like I walked in and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. 16 years is a long, long time.
I don't know how to ask the question I want to ask, Father, so I'm going to punt for now. But I had a text question sent to me, just kind of a general, besides the doors being closed, et cetera, talk about the coronavirus, COVID-19 time and how it's affected your parish. Have you done anything new because of it, whether that's, calling people or, those sorts of things? That was just kind of the gist of the question that I received.
Okay. Fortunately, in 2013, we hosted the choir conference for the Southwest, and there were so many people, we knew they weren't going to fit in the church. So we looked into live streaming back in 2013. So we could stream the service over to the hall. And that worked so well, we started streaming ever since then. So when COVID happened, we already had a long time on live stream. We already had a decent camera. We added Facebook Live, that platform. And our welcome ministry, the welcome ministry started calling, they divided up our community, and then everyone was getting 1 call a week from the welcome ministry. And in addition to that, me and our 2 pastoral assistants, we also split the community in thirds, and we would call everybody, not every week, but over the course of a few weeks, everyone got a call from the pastoral team, and then every week some got a call either from the pastoral team or the welcome ministry. And now that we're back in small groups, the welcome ministry is actually going to do a whole series of calls next week, 1st of July, just to check on people. And we've kept a list of who's come to church. We've had 267 different people come to church in the last 3 weeks, not all together. And then we've had obviously a lot of people who haven't come. So I've given that list to the welcome team so they'll know when they're calling, this is someone who has been back or who hasn't been back. So I can't think of anything else that we've done that's too out there or whatever.
George Thomas just sent a question back to your welcome ministry. Is there a material or a packet of some kind that you give to people?
There is a during normal time, there's a folder that has a piece of paper with a welcome letter from me, a welcome letter from the welcome ministry, a list of all our ministries, and the name, email, and phone of everyone who does it. So like if you're interested in Sunday school, you can find that person. There's what we call a connection card. It's what people fill out, their name, address, phone number, and all that. The latest copy of the Messenger, which is our monthly bulletin, my business card, and a stewardship packet. And it's all in a nice blue folder. And our greeters always have one of those. We have them in the pulpit, at the baptistry, in the narthex, in the hall. And then now that with the COVID, we've put all that online on a tab on our webpage. By the way, if anyone is interested in my the prayer team is what I call it. You can go from our webpage. It's Prayer Team 365, and you just put your email on it, and you get an email every morning at 12:33. I don't write them then; they just go out then.
Before you answer that last question that's in the chat, Father, earlier somebody asked about a second priest, and when you and I spoke on the phone, you're in the process, aren't you, of looking for or bringing a second priest on board?
We're hoping. I mean, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
We're not. I have two pastoral assistants. One is married, and perhaps in a couple of years, the other one he gets married, and there's possibility there. I'm honestly a little leery about the process of getting a second priest because you never know who you're going to get. I'm hoping that it'll be one of these guys that I have here that I know.
Gotcha.
I'm hoping we can do it that way.
Okay.
The process is a little bit complicated how they do it.
Okay. And then now we can jump to can you briefly describe engage orthodoxy? No.
Where'd you find that?
John.
It's in your Sunday bulletin.
In my Sunday bulletin.
Yeah, let's see, page 4. On page 4 of your Sunday bulletin.
All right.
Seems to be some sort of pan-Orthodox group that meets together socially.
Oh, we have a young adult group. There's 2 young adult groups in this area. There's one in my own parish, and there's one in the Tampa Bay area. And I think it's that one. I think that's that's an area group.
Gotcha. Okay.
My pastoral assistants do that. I probably should know what that is. Sorry, I feel stupid.
How long have your pastoral assistants been with you? It seems like you've got a good working relationship with them.
I've had one for 6 years, and he's homegrown and went to seminary from here. And at this very moment, I only have one. We had one that left last week, just wanted to go a different direction, and we're bringing a new one. We made a decision we interviewed someone yesterday that we're going to hire. So that one is going to come aboard in a month or so. So I say we have 2. Truthfully, we have 1 at this moment. We'll have 2 in a few weeks. And we had 2 up until 10 days ago. And okay. The Charlie, who's been with me for 6 years, is awesome, and I anticipate him being here a while longer. And then Alex, who's going to come aboard now, he has been in this area, and he's actually been attending our parish for a while doing a hospital chaplaincy program, and he is really feeling the call. He's a seminary graduate, and he wanted to try hospital chaplaincy. And he said, you know, I've enjoyed that, but I really feel called to be in a parish. And, you know, maybe he gets ordained in a few years, you know, who knows?
Father Jim asked if in talking about resistance to change, you know, because as your intro remarks started, you said, you know, you've been there 16 years and came in and found this, and this, and then in my second year, you know, I did this. So I guess talk about how you've always handled that sort of or people who have been resistant, whether it's about stewardship or Greek and English in the liturgy, all of those different subjects.
You know, I've never been really good with confrontation. That's one thing, so I don't handle that particularly well. Number two, I remember a story I read about a priest who went to a church. This is a made-up story, I'm sure. A priest who went to a church and found a statue in the middle of the solea. And he said, we're not allowed to have statues. I'm throwing the statue out. And so he threw it out. And then the community said, we're throwing you out. So then they kicked him out. They put the statue back in the middle of the solea, and they brought a new priest, and they said, don't touch that statue. And the priest in his head said, of course, that statue's wrong. But and he said to himself, here's what I'm going to do. He measured from the statue to the door, and he found that it was 200 inches to the door. So every Monday morning he came in, he moved the statue an inch. They moved another inch. They moved another inch. And after 4 years, he had the statue out the door. And like I've always had that kind of philosophy here, you know. So I put up with the statue for a few years, even though I knew it was wrong. But I knew, you know, if you're going to get rid of all this stuff too fast, they're just going to get rid of you. So I'm like, let's just move it slow, even though it's wrong. I'll let it go for a little bit, and I'll move it slowly, and they won't even notice. So like the first year I was here, I did everything. My first Sunday I was here, I did everything in Greek, 100% Greek. And I said to them, I go, that's so you all know I can do it. And then the second Sunday we went 50-50. And then every so often I would take a petition or two out, so they wouldn't notice. Then my second year in Lent, they complained. They said, Father, the service is so long during Lent because St. Basil's. I said, what do you think if I take the epistle out in Greek? Just for Lent. They're like, oh yeah, Father, anything to shorten the service. So we took the epistle out, and after Lent, I just didn't put it back in, and no one noticed. Next year they complained. They said, Father, it's so long in Lent. And I said, what if we take the Pistevo out in Greek? They said, oh, anything, Father, to get the service. So we took the Pistevo out, and then I left it out. They didn't notice. The next year I took the gospel out in Greek. They didn't notice. The next year I took the Lord's Prayer out in Greek. They noticed. They said, put that back. And I'm like, okay, good. So I know what they'll tolerate. So I mean, in our community, we don't do the epistle, the gospel, the Pistevo in Greek, and we do the Lord's Prayer in both languages. And little by little, we took the petitions out. I have nothing against Greek. One time someone complained about the Greek. So I said in a sermon, I said, I'm going to give you one line of the liturgy, and if anyone can tell me what it means, I'll do next week half in Greek. So the line was, and the fathers will remember this, Vefte proskinisum and keprospesum en Christo. I go, can anyone tell me what that means? Nobody in the church. I'm like, no one can tell me what it means? I said, it means come let us worship and bow down to Christ, and it's at the small entrance. So I'm like, well, no one can tell me that. So then I'm not going to go back on what I'm doing. When I went to the choir and I asked them to sing more English, they made a deal with me. They said, Father, we'll do more English as long as you make the English match the music we already know. So I had to go through all their hymns and took their music and put it to some kind of English so they didn't have to learn new music. And they were okay with that. I mean, as long as I did it that way, they're okay with that. Now, I'll tell you seriously and not flippantly, probably the turning point in my ministry happened probably in 2012. I'd been here 8 years, and the Philoptochos was complaining. Someone was complaining to the bishop that they didn't like our feeding the homeless ministry. They were writing anonymous letters to him and to me, and they were saying, you know, how come you guys are feeding the Mavri, and just terrible thing. So one Sunday in church, it was the Stavros. It was the third Sunday of Lent, the Sunday where you carry all the flowers on the tray. And I'm saying this story with seriousness. One of my altar boys comes in and says, "Father, I have to leave at 10:30. We have dance practice for the March 25th program after the liturgy." And I said, "No, you don't. We're not having dance practice at 10:30 while I'm celebrating the liturgy." He goes, no. The teacher said to meet her in the hall. Just leave church and go to the hall at 10:30. So I said to the kid, I said, "Please have your father come here." So he had his dad come in the altar, and I said, "I'm not going to go over to the hall and tell her that she can't have dance practice. You go do it. But here's the thing. If there's dance practice at 10:30, I quit. I'm going to stop the liturgy. I'm going to take my vestments off. I'm going to go home, and you'll never see me again. Because if I got to compete with basketball and birthday parties and baseball, that's one thing. If I got to compete with Greek dance practice 50 feet away from the altar while I'm celebrating the liturgy, I don't want to be here anymore." So I was so mad while I'm celebrating the liturgy. And at 10:30, I sent someone to the hall to find out what was going on there. And they were all sitting down, talking, gossiping about me, but they weren't dancing. So then it came time toward communion. And I'm like, how can I receive communion? I'm so angry. My heart's pounding. So I stopped the liturgy right before the Lord's Prayer. And I said, "Everybody sit down." And I said, everyone has had a Sunday where they've come into church and they haven't received communion because they're in a bad mood or they've had a bad week. And I said, I have to receive communion because I'm the priest and I'm in a bad mood. And so I'm going to talk to you as long as I have to until I feel like I can go receive communion with some kind of a clear conscience. And I told him about the dancing, and I said, this is going to stop. I said, please don't send me anonymous letters. I don't read them. And please stop telling the bishop, complain that we're feeding the Mavri. I said, I opened the Bible and it says, Panda ta ethni, not Panda ta aspri, which means to baptize all nations, not all white people. And I said, if this is the kind of church you want, just tell me and I'll leave. Today will be my last Sunday. But if you want me to stay, this is not the kind of church I want to have. And then I broke down. I started sobbing. I got on my knees. I asked forgiveness from people. It was an ugly thing that I hope I never repeat again. I hope I never need to repeat it. I hope I never repeat that. And people like took notice. And after that, like it got a lot. That's when it sort of the trajectory went up and really fast. Because I was really serious. I'm like, I'm done here. This is the way we're going to do this. I don't want to be here anymore. I'll go someplace else. I'm from California. What am I doing in Florida? And people took notice, and people came to my office. Some people were upset about what I had done, but they understood. Some people came and apologized, and it kind of, the trajectory went really good right after that. I would say that was the turning point of my ministry here. I mean, I was in tears.
Father,
I remember that.
I have one other question. In Pittsburgh and in Cleveland, not Columbus, where I am. We only have one parish, one Greek Orthodox parish, but, Pittsburgh, the Cleveland area, you mentioned having 3 or 4 other parishes in less than an hour's time from you, a half hour, 45 minutes. The question is, do you find people shopping for parishes, and how do you handle that, right? Because we all are working from a limited pool of people and parishioners. How do you handle that sort of situation, I guess, is the best way I could ask it.
I mean, there have been people who come to our church because they feel comfortable here, and I welcome them. I don't say, hey, leave. You don't belong here. You're in Tarpon, or you live in Clearwater, go there. I mean, if people want to come here, that's fine. On the flip side, there are people who come here and they're like, Father, you don't do enough Greek. And I'm like, please go to Tarpon Springs. They cater to people like you. They love that. I'm like, and I said, you're lucky. We're in an area where we have a lot of parishes, and they're all different. St. Stephanos and St. Peter is very small. If you want a small, homey atmosphere, go there. If you want super Greek, go to Tarpon, and they're good parishes. I'm not knocking those parishes at all. You know, and if I was assigned to Tarpon Springs tomorrow, I'd have to carry myself in a totally different manner, because it's a different crowd over there, and I understand that. When I lived in Asheville, it was a very Greek parish. Everybody wanted their house blessed, so I'd close the office for half of January. I'd bless every house in the community. In Tampa, they don't want their houses blessed. They're American. They don't care about that. They look at me as a psychologist here. The line is out the door for counseling and confession. That's what everybody wants here. They don't want their houses blessed. You know, so I don't push the envelope and say, no, everyone's got to have the house blessed. I just embrace it that this is what they want. You know, as long as we celebrate the liturgy and we believe in the same God, you know, we can do it a little different. So, you know, I don't have, you know, there's a bigger social aspect in Clearwater. And I mean, I love all these guys. All the priests are friends of mine, Father Harrows, Father Jim Paris. I mean, these are great guys, great priests. So yeah, people shop around, and I don't encourage or discourage. It's just a reality. I don't really think about it that much.
Well, before I keep going, I know we started a little bit after 4:30. We're coming up on 5:40, and Father Stavros, Steve Pappas had to go for a work-related meeting, so he sends his apologies for that, but he also said he enjoyed the conversation tremendously. So I just want to stop and point that out to everybody. We're at about 5:40. And I'm always mindful of time. So if there are any, I mean, Father Stavros, you've given us so much to think about, and I hope you appreciate everybody that's, thank you for sharing that story about that particular Sunday and the dance troupe and your feeling as you were prior to receiving Holy Communion. Are there any last questions for Father Stavros? Been a great discussion, and I appreciate your time. You know, believe it or not, this is what we've been doing for almost 4 years through these video conferences, is just having conversation and trying to learn from one another, share best practices, and take something away from each of these calls.
I think it's a great idea, the best practices. Yeah, Father Costa.
Well, I was just going to add and say, you know, here in Cleveland, we do have, within an hour's radius here, there's, I don't know, 5, 6 churches. So sometimes there is this sense of shopping around. There's this sense, and you know, maybe it's the Greek element in people too, a sense of comparing this and that. And, you know, and I just say, you know, each community has their own personality. And, you know, and what I do here at St. Paul might not fly. I know it doesn't fly downtown at the Annunciation. That's a very Greek community. But as you said with Tarpon, I'm grateful. Because if somebody comes to us and they're very Greek in their mentality, fine. Go there and find your place, you know. I don't go knocking on people's doors that are not parishioners. But if they come to our church, I embrace them. And I would say if they come with issues from their community, I know that in time there will be they're going to go back. So it's not personal. I just say, you know, if you want to come for the time being and you find peace here, fine. But I know things get normal and they go back to their communities, and that's okay, you know. But it's this understanding that, you know, from a human perspective, yeah, you know, we're competitive always and all that, but I just try to keep the course and say, you know, this is who we are, this is what we're offering, and let's just go with that and rejoice in God for the opportunity, you know. And we're all learning from one another. So what you mentioned earlier, I got it from somewhere else too, and we always learn and apply things to our own setting, because each community really is different, as you mentioned as well. Thank you.
Father Stavros, somebody just pointed out to me, I missed a question in the chat. And I thought you touched on this, but I will throw it back to you with regard to Philoptochos and its own fundraising.
Yeah, the Philoptochos does a couple fundraisers every year. They do a bake sale at Christmas. They do our Palm Sunday luncheon. And so they get a lot of stuff from there. But most of the funds that they get from there, and they're now distributing to local parishes, local charities, our Philippians just partnered with a Catholic church this last fall, and they did this feeding children everywhere, where you like get together and you make like 20,000 meals. But you got to invest like $6,000. So we split it with a Catholic church down the street, and they all came to our church in January, like 90 people. And we did that one Sunday after church. So what we wanted to stop doing was we wanted to stop second trays. So we said to the Philippians, whatever you make off a second tray, we're just going to give it to you. So we stopped second trays and we stopped first trays, but they still raise money through a couple of fundraisers like that.
Okay, thank you.
How about I'm bored, you all?
Heck no. Are you kidding me? The texts and messages I'm getting, the conversation's been so enjoyable and so wonderful. Father, thank you.
I was in Cleveland last year for a retreat at St. Constantine and Helen, and I was supposed to come this year to Akron, Father Jerry, and that got COVIDed out. But Father Jerry says that he's going to have me when we're back to normalcy. So I may be up in your area at some point.
Wonderful.
Hopefully not in the winter.
Wonderful.
When it's cold there.
It's not cold here anymore. You don't worry about that a bit. Father, would you honor us? Father Stavros, would you close us in prayer, please?
For sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord our God, we ask your blessing on all of us who have shared in this call today. Especially we ask your blessings for Stacy, who is sharing this, and we ask your blessings for my brothers and co-celebrants, Father Costa and Father Jim, and their ministries. And we ask, Lord, that you help us all come to a greater understanding of you as we understand you, that we become better stewards of what you've given us. We ask your blessing on our country in a time of illness and of civil unrest. We ask you to provide healing and peace for us. And we ask that you help us honor you by honoring and working with one another. We ask this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
By the way, when I'm praying and there's a priest there, I always pray for the priest by name, because the priests never can say their name when they're praying corporately. So they never hear their names. You all hear your names, but the priest never hears their name from anybody else. So I always do that. So thank you. God bless my brothers, Father Costa and Father Jim, and all of you.
Thank you, Father.
Father Stavros, thank you for sharing your time with us this evening.
For sure.
To everybody on the call, I wish you all well and a wonderful evening. We may skip July just because summertime's a little bit slower, but I've got something good in store for August. More on that in an email later after the 4th and after we get through it all. So I hope you all have a blessed and wonderful evening, and thank you for joining us. And Father Stavros, thank you for an excellent conversation.
God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Wherever in Florida, look us up.
Father Stavros, Stacy.
Thank you.
Bye.